Welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. Our first three-time guest to the DGP. Welcome back.
I mean, third time's the charm, right? I guess I'm doing something right that you keep asking me back. So
Well, I
excited to
think
be here.
it's
This is one of my first live streams. I don't think we did live stream the first two times, right?
yeah. This is definitely a new wrinkle. Usually, Joseph and I record our intros live, and maybe half a dozen people listen to it. So Friday night, I can't imagine people are
Well,
diving
here I'm
in, but
going to
maybe
share
this.
it right now.
Yeah, go
I'm
for
going to
it.
share it for you. Let's see.
So while you're doing that, Joseph, Brentley and I spent a lot of time together this past week. So I was a newbie at the NCAA Men's Championship at La Costa, and basically followed Brentley like a lost puppy. And he was nice enough to take care of me for most of the week. But yeah, Brentley just got back from basically 2 weeks in San Diego, covering both the women's and men's NCAA golf championships. Both of them like great match play, great drama, great TV. And this is the second year at La Costa. And I wanted to maybe start there first. We're going to get into this episode. The season just wrapped up. Brentley wanted to get your take and just maybe do a fun kind of riff, like way too early, thinking about next year and potential match play teams for next year, and just use it as an excuse to talk about guys leaving, guys coming in, guys transferring, et cetera, just to wet our whistle going into the summer of amateur golf and what we might expect starting next year. So my observations of La Costa, just being a first timer, they absolutely need to make La Costa the permanent home for the men's and women's championships. John Fields, the coach of Texas, had this vision and really put it in place. And kudos to him for having this vision and then bringing in Gil Hans to renovate the golf course. It checks a lot of the boxes, I think, for a championship in terms of location, weather, the facilities, like the campus around the golf course, just having all of the players staying there. Like those are some of the obvious things. To me, I think there are some intangibles about trying to build something from scratch, and it does take like vision. And I was thinking a lot about it this past week with the Tour Championship and the Tour announcing their seventh different iteration in 19 years of the Tour Championships, and then like having focus groups and getting together with players and then coming up with this like, all right, we got this great new concept. Everybody starts at par and we're going to play 72 holes and the guy with the lowest score wins, and
It's a placeholder.
yeah, and it's a placeholder, right? So like we can't really get invested in it because it might end up changing a year or two from now as well. But it makes me think that there was, they may find some solid footing eventually, but they lost all this opportunity to build history and heritage with the event if they had maybe gotten things right the get-go. Like I continue to contend that if the Tour Championship were set up as a match play thing all along, like we would have had a couple like groundbreaking moments in golf history that would have really put that tournament on the map, such that it becomes more of a must-watch thing. Not quite a major, not quite a Ryder Cup, but something coming around the players. In between that and the majors, and I think that's kind of what college golf, the opportunity that college golf has in front of it, and thankfully with the vision of Coach Fields and others, his daughter April, like building this foundation and trying to build it into something. And you see it with college baseball with Omaha. I mean, that's really kind of the model, right? But like that doesn't happen unless someone has a vision to kind of make this happen and then continuing to invest in it. And that means like players and coaches also investing in it, taking a little bit of time outside of the time that they're there to make sure that the event is successful, outreach with fans. Like I saw players signing autographs for kids, there as well. Like that sort of thing, I think really kind of builds this thing up over time. So I don't know what your experience was like year two versus year one.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely improved over year one. I will say a couple things that could probably take it to another level, because the crowds were good, but I wouldn't say they were better than some of the years we had at Greyhawk, and certainly not better than 2018 at Karsten Creek with OSU in the final, or Eugene in 2016 with Oregon. But again, that doesn't happen unless you're on campus somewhere and you get the home crowd. San Diego's not super easy to get to. I will say it's not like everyone, as far as a spectator standpoint, like not everyone can stay at La Costa. Those rooms are not cheap, and there are other events going on there as well. I think there was a racquetball convention or something that overlapped with the men, so there's not a ton of rooms, even though you are at a massive resort. So I think those are some of the drawbacks. But what can overcome that? And I saw guys like Shane Bacon and Kyle Porter and Andy and Brendan like talk about it and cover it and share and say, hey, I'm watching this. Like I think Shane tweeted like this, like the college golf is like such a great watch. I think we need more investment from some of the other media outlets. Golf.com didn't send anyone there. Golf Digest, had Todd there a couple days. He lives in the area, but they weren't there every day. And also those, I feel like more people have to cover college golf throughout the entire season. Like you can't just drop in and cover it for, a few days, for the NCAA championship. But I do think with Clipped, for as much as I've been critical of them over the last couple of years, like they are making improvements. And I do think having a one-stop shop and a site where you can look at rankings, you can click on teams, you can see their results. Hopefully we can start getting some historical data in there as well. And I know they want to get more comprehensive in terms of their stats. Not anything super crazy, but maybe we can get some birdie leaders or actual scoring average rankings and different things to that standpoint. I think that would make it an easy follow for the fan. And then lastly, guys like Scotty Scheffler and some of the top pros need to be more invested in their alma maters. They need to talk about it more. They need to seem like they're interested. It was really cool to see Ricky and Eckroad, and I got a little birdie told me that Victor Hovland was in the clubhouse at Muirfield Village watching the early part of the final. So we just need more of that, more on social media, these guys really getting excited. And also there's a foundation, and it requires money to do these types of things right. And golfers are getting paid increasingly larger amounts of money every single year. I don't think it's out of the realm to ask guys who have made it on the tour to try to give a little bit back, to the foundation, and kind of ensure that the current college golfers have a huge platform and can come back to La Costa, and we can continue to create something special. Because you're absolutely right when you touched on, Jim, it doesn't just happen overnight. You have to lay the foundation, and you have to be patient, and you got to keep building year over year. You're not just going to go and get millions of fans and on site and things like that overnight. So, but I do think there's been improvement, and I'm excited to go back. It was a long 2 weeks, and the jet lag is definitely real, but I can't wait till next year.
Yeah, I know. I will say this, like, to anybody who's not really following college and amateur golf, like, you can walk the fairways and be within 10 yards of guys that are going to be playing in the Canadian Open, right here in next week, or guys that are going to be on the tour in the next 2 or 3 years. And some of these guys are going to be household names in the not too distant future. I've always contended that, I think that we feel like we're the cool kids because we get in on these names early, and we get to tell other golf fans about them.
We're the
ones
kids
that are giving them exposure to those sorts of things. So, the other thing I would say in terms of the history and the heritage is like the memorable shots that you guys cover, and the classic matches. The fact that they're going to be played on those same holes with maybe even the same teams involved. Now you have this like treasure trove of shot history and replays and that sort of thing that you can bring back, and there's a familiarity with these holes, and even like there's a little bit of gamesmanship in the men's championship.
I was going to say, we can always look back on the Cameron Tankersley versus Philip Fallberg Johnson match. There's final few holes. That was That was some golf. I don't want to say it was some great golf, but it was golf, and it was exciting.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the beauty of match play, right? Because that's only the moment. That's only the being out there all day, right? That's the pressure of the moment. Not to sound too much like Paul Azinger, but hey, those are great golfers hitting horrible shots, right? And it's sort of the beauty of match play, beauty of a team event, because now you're not just playing for yourself. You got your like basically your team's fate is resting on the shoulders of those matches and how they turn out. It's really cool.
Did you sense some animosity toward match play? Being on site and not naming names, but did you get a sense that some people there weren't necessarily fans of the format?
Well, I think Joseph raised the question before we got on. I don't know, Joseph, you wanted to chime in. Like, was there a reason behind that question?
Well, you just follow college golf all year, and then it comes down to 1 week, and I just want to raise the question, Brentley. Do we really think Oklahoma State was the best college golf team all year?
Well, I mean, Mark Brody ranks them second at the end of the year, so it's not too far off. I mean, Auburn was clearly the best team, but I'd argue, was Florida the best team in college basketball this past season? Like, they were probably one of the 4 best teams. Probably not. I'd probably rank them as the 3rd best team all season, but I don't. They weren't the best, certainly, and they win. And I've had this argument with Lance Ringler from Golf Week quite a bit, and obviously I do have a bias now, working for Golf Channel, but just getting to see these matches and some of this drama, like, sure, the Oklahoma State Virginia match toward the end did not really provide some crazy moment, but Solomon Raza in Oregon in 2016 did. Like, just the environment in 2018 at Karsten Creek did. But you go back to 2009 with Bronson Burgoon and Texas A&M. If that had been on TV on the Golf Channel like it is now, like, that would have been an incredible moment. And so, I just don't think that. Like, I realize, as Lance likes to argue, you're playing the same format, and then it's all of a sudden it's like you're playing, like in basketball, you're playing 2 halves, and then all of a sudden you're playing, with 6 guys on the court for the final, like, 5 minutes of a game or something. And I get that, but at the same time, golf is just so different from every other sport. You play so many different formats in golf. The tour has a Stableford event. The tours, had a match play event up until a hot minute ago. The Ryder Cup is match play and foursomes and 4-ball. So golf is just different, and I don't think it's necessarily that terrible that we end in match play. So maybe we need to make more things match play. Maybe every conference championship needs to have some sort of match play element. Maybe regionals needs to have some sort of match play element. And maybe we have a lot more match play in the fall around football games. I know that there's something in the works. I don't want to speak before this kind of gets announced, but there's something in the works for 2 teams to play ahead of a big football game this fall, and have it televised and maybe get some alumni involved and things like that. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be we only play match play at nationals for 2 days. It could be something bigger than that. It's infinitely more exciting, and it's so much easier to understand. And I'll close because I know I'm rambling, but a perfect example is there was a photographer out there. I don't know who he is originally working for, but it was clear he was new to golf, but he was shooting for whether it was Getty or the tournament or something. And he came up to me, and it was funny. He came up to me initially when I had my headset for TV on, and I was trying to listen to something, and so I kind of blew him off. But I'm like, all right, well, he had a question. Let me go back when I have a second. So I went back to him, and it was like stroke play. He was trying to understand what the heck was going on, and he was so confused. And so I explained it to him, and then I explained that it's going to be different for match play. And then I saw him on Wednesday, and I said, how's it going? And he said, this is so much easier for me to understand. And so to me, that was the example that for the casual fan, which is, what you have to kind of attract if you want to grow. That it's just so much easier to kind of get. And it's easier for, like, my wife to understand it and watch it, and my in-laws and family and things like that. So it's not going anywhere either, Lance. Sorry.
It's also, I would say, there's beauty behind the 5-on-5, and they're not like in the Ryder Cup where you have halves or whatever, because like it's easy to tell like who needs to do what in what match in order for it to flip, or like, oh crap, it's going to come down to this match, and then you end up watching it with quite a bit of intent because like these other matches are safe or they're done or whatever the case may be. It's like whoever wins this match, that team is going to advance because like it's going to be 3-2, or it can't, you don't have these kind of weird ties like you have in the Ryder Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, Burko like announcing, all right, well, so and so is a drop score, and having to explain that every like 25 minutes. You don't need to do that in match play. So I agree.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say is maybe a potential negative around the golf course is just like the out and back nines where the turn is way far away from the clubhouse, but at least it has its own little kind of loop like 6, 7, 8, and 9, and it actually works well for the playoff holes, right? So if you finish on the front, I think the playoff holes is 7, 8, 9, which is all kind of right there, right? And then obviously the back nine is set up perfect for tournament golf with 15, 16, 17, and 18. You can sit on a hill and see all of those holes at once, and then if there's a playoff, it goes right over to 16, that par 3. So
yeah,
I mean, well for TV.
The out and back is definitely an issue from our perspective, right? Because a lot of times, especially for me doing interviews at the end for TV, it'd be so much easier in stroke play at least, because a lot of times you do get the champion finishing on. I mean, Hiroshi Tai did it last year. I think Lasasso finished on the back as well. So it would be nice to have 9 come back to the clubhouse just so you can kind of be in the same place at once. But I do think you're right. Like there's a shuttle service. Once you get out there, it is a really cool loop. And that playoff between Ole Miss and Arizona State, well, not playoff, but the extra holes with Tom Fisher and Michael Miasith, with Miasith chipping in and that kind of theater. And then the day before, or I guess the same day, you had Ian Gilligan and Christian Moss kind of coming down the stretch too. That was really cool. And I said this earlier on Burko and I's pod, College Golf Talk. I have a pretty good recollection of golf courses, and I don't remember many of the holes at Greyhawk. I remember all the holes now after 2 years at La Costa, and I think there's a decent variety. I could do without the tee box, the front tee box for the women on 18 into the sun, where they're hitting 7-iron. But yeah, I think it's good. Just hopefully no one gets in the shuttle when they're actually teeing off on one, like the poor Florida girl.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that, but I did see your tweet on that. We touched on it a little bit, but the other thing that I think match play has going for it is bad blood, gamesmanship. Like that sort of thing would never happen in stroke play. At least like these teams are going to have very long memories. So imagine if Oklahoma State or Virginia, or maybe they're facing each other in the first round of match play next year. Like there's a lot to go to the well on, with those kind of storylines and those kind of bad bloods. And that's sort of the thing that fuels a lot of this match play and drama, and gives folks a reason to watch. Like, hey, I'm going to tune into that to see if there's any more of that stuff this year.
To see if there's some punches get thrown.
Because didn't Devin Patel get into somebody's grill on that?
No, I think there were some words exchanged between two members of Virginia and Oklahoma State, and smartly a member of the media said, let's just go to your corners. Everything's going to be fine. This match is still going on. One team's going to win, one team's going to lose, but let's just go to our corners. And everyone did, and it was kumbaya. So, all
right. Well, on that note,
you're trying to get me in trouble there.
Let's go to. Let's take a way too early look at the 2025-2026 season. I know that our prognostication skills aren't the greatest. If anyone saw our little contest that we had, we made some pretty poor choices in terms of, I didn't pick Michael Lasasso, I picked someone else on Ole Miss. But I did end up beating you head to head. So that was a tasty burger at La Costa. But just wanted to preview the next season, and maybe just go back and forth. I'll let you have the first pick. Just bring up a team that you like most likely to be in one of the 8 in match play next year, and we talk about like the moving pieces if there are any, like ins and outs, and we'll just use that as a launching point. Just kind of bring up some of these teams that might be contending for a title next year.
All right. Well, I'm going to go chalk and pick the easy pick, and that's Oklahoma State. I mean, no seniors and no juniors in the starting lineup. And our buddy David Tennyson, college golf book, I don't think he has the answer yet, but he said it at least hasn't happened since 1990. So a national champion with just freshmen and sophomores. So you got to go with them. All those guys are coming back. I mean, Ethan Fang, Preston Stout were first-team All-Americans this year. I really think that Eric Lee, what we've seen in spurts from him, obviously the pedigree as a junior, being a Rolex Junior Player of the Year, I mean, that is, like, I think he's going to take a huge step, kind of being in Stillwater now for a second year as a junior. He's going to ascend to that kind of first, second-team All-American territory. The only question with the team is, are there enough mouths to feed, or are there too many mouths to feed? And you add in Henry Guan, a top 5 ranked junior who reclassified, right? He was a 26 and is now a 25. They've had some guys transfer out. I've heard there's going to be a kid transferring in. He was following him the last couple of days out of the ACC. Played for a team earlier that week, and he stayed around to perhaps watch his future team. So if that rumor is indeed true, you have 7 or 8 guys, assuming that John Wild is, is going to be as much of a factor as Alan Bratton seems to think. That's a very, very deep team, and I don't think any other program in the country can match that depth.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been following and watching Henry. We know him really, really well for years down here in Dallas. Like, he's always been the man. I mean, he made the semifinals of the Western Am last summer. So I would expect him to really contend, not only for the lineup, but really contend for one of those top spots. Like, he is that good. So I think this team is loaded. I know Joseph can attest. Like, I don't know how many of we have these occasional texts between Joseph, Andrew, and myself, and a lot of them start with like, "Man, Oklahoma State is loaded," and just the fact that they don't have, everybody's coming back, right? They had to do some house cleaning because they had like 13 players with their recruits and no seniors, but it looks like that's sort of shaken out for the most part. But yeah, I think that the only thing that could be is that sort of like potential locker room drama, right? The guy who thinks that he should be playing and isn't, but I think that's a good problem to have at the end of the day.
Who's next?
All right. I'm going to go with Texas. Speaking of teams that have everybody returning, I think literally everybody returning. So they ran pretty lean roster this year, I think, with 7 guys, and their starting 5 was pretty much set in stone all year, especially once Daniel Bennett got in the lineup and started like really winning or like finishing top 5 in pretty much everything. And he was first team All-American as well.
Mm-hmm. Only guy on that team, which was, I thought it was a little surprising. I considering that Christian Moss was a Haskins finalist and not Daniel Bennett, but that's why there's different committees. Yeah,
and he was a clipped darling, right? Was he number 1 or number 2 in the rankings in the fall? But continued his pretty strong play in the spring. I think what we ended up seeing even in NCAAs is like Tommy and especially Christian didn't really have their best stuff, and they still were right there. And I think like was Jack Gilbert potentially their highest finisher, or in Luke Potter stepped up as well, won a tournament this year. So they have enough depth where if one of their guys isn't playing particularly well, like someone's gonna step up. They've got 2 great recruits coming in, Adam Villanueva and Brooks Simmons, both here from Texas, both like 9th, 10th in that class. And I think they've shown with like Brian Stark and kind of going back in time, like they are kind of a destination, right? And always maybe on the lookout for that one missing piece, that one key cog in the machine. So I would be on a close lookout for them as well. But no reason to think that they can't improve on their number 5 ranking from this year.
Is Joseph getting in on this, or?
I think you and I can just go back and forth.
All right. Okay. I didn't want to go out of turn, but all right. I'll throw out a team who we saw a lot of this week, and that's Virginia. I had to do the math and kind of realize that I guess for every year of club golf you play, it actually it adds a year of eligibility. So Paul Chang, surprisingly, the kid's like 25 or 26, I think. He still has one more year. So Paul Chang is back. The scooter is going to be charged for one more year. The scooter that he would ride to the golf course every day in and out of traffic. Paul Chang's back. Ben James is back. I mean, we saw Ben James was the only guy who won his match, and he beat Preston Stout to do so. Ben James I think he's overlooked maybe a little bit because he's so quiet. Like he doesn't have the extrovert gene like a Luke Clanton or even kind of a Jackson Coyven now. I think Jackson's come out of his shell a lot. Ben James just kind of quietly does his thing. He's really good. Brian Lee, that guy might be the best putter in college golf. Super impressive, very nice kid. They lose Devin Patel, but he was subbed out. So they bring back Josh Dwangmany, Maxi Pereger. I don't know as far as like recruits that they're bringing in. They don't have anyone in my top 25. But again, you bring back Ben James in most of that core, and all 5 guys who played in the final match, you're going to be top 5 or 6 in my book once we get to August 1st and I finalize my preseason rankings.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned Jackson Coyven. I was going to go Auburn next. I mean, they're losing 2, really kind of 3 guys that played for them, right? Brendan Valdez, Carson Baca, and I think Ryan Eshelman was in the lineup every now and then.
A couple transfers
but yeah,
out.
Two of their top 3. They had a couple. Reed Lauder, I think, transferred out. Evan Vo transferred out. But they have a really good recruiting class. Logan Riley, I think you had him number 1 in your recruiting list for the 2025s. The guy's a stud. Like he should be playing right away from my standpoint. So I think they'll pick up some of the slack. And then with Coyven at the top, I mean, they were the most dominant team this year. So even if they're not quite at the level they were this year, I would expect them to be a 1 seed and in contention. But while we're on that subject, he earned his PGA Tour U accelerated. Like he got a picture of him with a tour card. Like, was this always like a non-event in terms of his decision making? Like, do you have any insight there in terms of, how much thought he potentially gave to going pro early?
I mean, he had been pretty consistent with us at least about his plans. I mean, he's been on the record before in the last year or so saying that he wants to play 4 years at Auburn. I don't think that's 100%, but he'll definitely be back next year. So for the point of this exercise, I mean, I think you can count on Jackson Coyven being, available for Nick Kleinert. And the thing about the PGA Tour U accelerated, there's been, some people I think that don't really fully understand it will say like, oh, he could take it any time. But no, you have to, if he's going to defer and come back for his junior year, he can't just decide in February, and turn pro and say, all right, I want to play on the PGA Tour. He's going to have to wait until after NCAAs next year to do so. So he's coming back. I'm not worried about it. And he's, I mean, I guess I said Brian Lee is the best putter, like probably behind Jackson Coyven. I probably was a little bit hyperbolic on that, but they're both really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're Auburn. Oklahoma State's off the board. Virginia's off the board. Texas is off the board. How deep are we going on this? 8?
We'll go 8, and then we can do odds and ends after that.
Okay. I'm gonna go. This is tough. It's tough to tell because a lot of transfers haven't really been officially announced yet. So I don't think I can kind of pull the curtain back on some of these things. But I'm gonna go Ole Miss, simply because, as far as I know, they only lose Kai Meeks, who was a huge part of that team. But if you're looking at a talent perspective, I think he was probably their fifth guy. Tom Fisher, I thought, since last summer when he broke out at the USAM, just really took multiple steps forward, and seeing him play a lot this week and seeing him play some really high pressure situations, whether it be toward the end of stroke play or the match against Miasith, that's like he's going to be really good. He's tall, he's athletic. He's really got a good confidence and a good attitude about him. So I think he's going to really continue to expand his game next year. Lasasso's back. He's so good, when he's not contracting stomach viruses and stepping on sea urchins. Cohen Trolio might be one of my favorite players in college golf. Just the way that he carries himself. He's extremely polite. He's extremely, I think he's extremely well thought out in what he says and how he acts and the things he does. I've really been impressed ever since he came on our podcast earlier this spring. Cameron Tankersley, really impressed with his short game. He really scrapped it together to even have a fighting chance in that semifinal match against Philip Fallberg Johnson, and had to deal with the crowding on the tee boxes and those types of things. I think it just comes down to who's going to be their fifth guy. As far as I'm looking, I didn't have anybody in my top 25 going to Ole Miss. I don't know if they're going to bring in a transfer or not, but I almost see them more like a Texas this year, where we kind of came in and we're like, yeah, they're going to be really solid, like 1 through 3, 1 through 4. What are they going to get after that? And I think that's a good question to answer. Maybe it's Collins Trolio, maybe it's somebody else. But after being number one for most of this season, I think we'd be remiss not to have them in our 8.
Yeah, and Tankersley qualified for the U.S. Open. I think he shot 8 under at Bentry. He was my pick in the pool. Didn't play nearly as well as his teammate. But Cohen, one of my favorites in college golf as well. I had a real good chat with him there. And Tankersley, my son played with him last year at Northeast AM, and he shot a final round 63. So he definitely has an extra gear for sure. I'm gonna go with my boys from Oklahoma. Hibble. I guess the one thing I wanted. We don't know how this whole NCAA settlement is going to shake out, right? With the potential grandfathering and the judges kind of sitting on the proposal, right?
Yeah, but it seems like, coaches have already, at least in golf, they've already made their moves. Guys have gone in the portal and transferred out. You look at teams like Tennessee and Auburn, like they've already said. It's not like you can just say, all right, we want those guys back. So, who knows? I haven't dove into the transfer portal too much, but it would seem I haven't heard about too many guys from Oklahoma getting in there, if any. So, I guess they graduated 3. So they have how many coming in? So.
Yeah, so Drew Goodman graduated. Stephen Campbell didn't play much this year. I think
Jackson Dowell
fifth year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're losing 3, and they have 3 coming in. So I have them with 12, and they got to get down to 8 potentially. So there may be some more movement, but I think absolutely at the top you've got Jay Summey and Ryder Cohen, and I think with those 2 guys at the top, you're going to be in contention.
And Clark Van Galen had a breakout performance too.
Yeah, that was the work that he put in the spring. And it was honestly really cool seeing Hibble kind of walking at basically every hole with him. You think like Hibble's like a short game wizard, and helping Clark kind of manage the course and the shots, and you just see this raw talent. huge frame. I think that he's someone who, if you're thinking about someone who could be potentially like a first team All-American even next year, making that leap between freshman year and sophomore year, that's someone I think you have to have on the short list.
So I actually have two more. Maybe we could do top 10, but just because I kind of like these two teams the same. And I'm not going to go – I'm not going to go with Florida because I figured you might touch on them. But I'm going to go Texas Tech first.
Okay.
They graduate Callum Scott, but to be perfectly honest, they finished the year ranked 21st. They made the 54-hole cut at Nationals, but they kind of did it without Callum Scott really being the type of player who we were used to seeing in years prior and at the Walker Cup and when he was low am at the Open last summer. And so they bring back some really good pieces. I mean, if Connor Graham decides he still wants to play college golf, he's back. Tim Weidemeyer, he's going to be a junior. He really came out of not nowhere, but took a step up. Matthew Komaji had wrist surgery right before the season, didn't play at all, but he's back. He got through U.S. Open local qualifying, so he's going to be playing. I believe he's down at the West Palm Beach final qualifier on Monday. So you get him back. Charlie DeLong graduates, but Sean Keeling, I would assume out of Ireland, he'll be a sophomore. Price Hill probably gets some look, and then they're going to add Adam Bresnu, who was a Nicholas Award winner in JUCO golf this year. They're going to add him too as a transfer. So Greg Sands can coach, and if he has Matthew Komaji back as the player that he was but pre-injury, this is going to be a really, really good team that's going to be in contention on Monday, and I think they'll be right around that eighth, that 8 bubble.
Yeah. All right, maybe this is a little bit off the radar, but I'm going to talk about San Diego State. So just looking at teams that have everybody coming back, so their top 7 guys are all back, assuming that no one transfers out. But they were ranked 15th this year, which probably would surprise folks. So if you think of that as sort of their floor, they've got some upside from there. I'm assuming Justin Hastings is back next year, kind of anchoring that team. But yeah, I would go San Diego State, at least someone who's kind of on my radar to be on the lookout for next year.
Yeah, there's they'll probably be, because there was some controversy about this last week, but it will be heightened next year when they're actually a top 10 team, and that's going to be BYU. I know that's kind of out of nowhere a little bit, but they only lose Zach Jones and Cole Ponich. They bring in Cooper Jones, who is on a mission, Jackson Moss, who I believe is on a mission as well. They're getting a pretty decent transfer as well in Parker Bunn from Oklahoma State. And then you think about, actually, no, Jackson Moss was a freshman this year, but he'll be more of a factor. But Simon Kwan's back, Peter Kim's back. So as long as Peter Kim has gotten out of that bunker on the 8th hole last week, I think he'll have a great year. Tyson Shelley, played a lot of meaningful rounds. So Todd Miller and Bruce, the two coaches there, they're going to have a lot of pieces, and they're only going to continue to get better. And BYU is a program too that's getting a lot of, just an athletic program that I think is getting a lot of money poured into it, and I think that's going to start paying off. So maybe it's not next year that they're a top 10 team making match play, but I do think in the next 2 or 3 years BYU will make match play at the NCAAs. That'll be my kind of bold prediction. So
this year, I think this was the first year they made it to the 4th round, right? Is that? I think that's correct.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like in the current format, because this was the 5th time that they had qualified in the current format, meaning that they couldn't play on Sunday, so they have to play Thursday. And they've been, for lack of a better term, like they've been blown out to sea the previous 4 times. Like in over those first 3 days. So it was good to see them actually post. I think their one over on Thursday was like the 4th best score of the 3rd round. So
Wow.
if it wasn't for Peter Kim's 11, they would have been right in there. They still would have fallen a little bit short, but they would have been making Ole Miss and Florida State think about them as well.
Yeah. Well, you kind of buried the lead. You didn't even mention Kihei Akina.
Oh, I forgot Akina. Yeah, no, exactly. And you know what? I believe that I talked about him on our podcast. It just totally slipped my mind. And perhaps that was because I knew that you would add that if I forgot it. So
yeah. U.S. national team member,
junior
national team member.
He could be the best player in this class. Like he has the potential to be that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he's I think 110 in Wagger. Like he's always had a very high Wagger for a junior golfer, which I think will get him into the U.S. Amateur this fall when the rankings update.
Yeah,
so I would expect big things from him.
And I also forgot Simon Hobdahl, who's going to Texas Tech. So kind of right around like just outside the top 10 in the class. And he's going to be good too.
One more that I wanted to bring up real quick was LSU. I don't know if I want to go out on a limb and say that they're going to make it into the final 8, but I do like these sort of compelling storylines in terms of them being a 1 seed, them falling short in regionals, and then how do they respond? I mean, obviously they're losing Algot clean, but they're pretty loaded, right? Arnie is like 22 and clipped as a freshman. It has to be freshman, all first team. And they've got a great coach just in his first year in Jake Amos. So I love to see how they respond and build on the regular season success and carry that over into next year's postseason.
Yeah, I was getting a little bit of. There were some coaches coming up to me last week and said, because I had that tweet about Jake Mamos, because he had so much success in the month of May, and I may have had some other coaches give me a hard time about that and predicting that they were going to win it all. If not Auburn, it was going to be then. That was kind of a live TV. Sometimes when you do these live, you just say things and you kind of go out on a limb just to say it.
Yeah.
And you really don't think it through. They probably weren't the second best team if I look back on that, but I don't think that takes away the job that Jake Amos did this year. And they do bring back everyone but Algot. And we talk about freshmen. I can't forget this guy. And actually, I was talking to a different coach who's friends with Jake just about a couple hours ago, and he was talking about how this kid, Daniel Hayes, who's coming in, the freshman from England, is really, really good. Like I believe Jake is just as excited about Daniel Hayes as he was Arnie last year. And we know what type of player Arnie was right out the gates. So if you assume that Daniel Hayes is going to immediately be one of those top freshmen in the country and a contender for the Mickelson Award, you add him with Arnie and Alphonse and Jay Mendel, maybe Matty Dodberry can find it, can find it at the bottom of the well. I'm on board with them too. They might be top 10 going into next year. I really like this is a great exercise, Jim, because normally I don't even think about this stuff until like mid-July. And I'm like, I need to start calling coaches and asking around.
Yeah, I mean, as far as prognostications go, like one thing I looked at is I think there were only 2 teams that made match play last year that made match play this year. I think Auburn and Virginia. Is that correct? And I mean, I think it's pretty light. Like some years, maybe it's like 4 of the 8 or whatever, but it's just a couple.
Was that right? Yeah, because Ohio State made it last year. Vandy, North Carolina, Florida State, Illinois. Wow, I mean, that's pretty crazy.
So it's kind
Florida made it last year or no? Florida didn't make it, right?
No. I think you listed all of them.
Jeez.
So it's interesting because but most of the top teams were right there to make it to match play, but there was so much turnover that we can expect there's going to be quite a bit of turnover. So now that we've kind of gone through them, like, are there other teams on the list that you think have a good chance, maybe that are outside a little bit further down the list that you think might we want to pay close attention to?
Yeah, Pepperdine's probably a school that intrigues me because they're so young, and I think Michael Beard is one of the best coaches in the country. Vanderbilt is intriguing just because I know they lose JVP, but they add some really good freshmen. Michael Reeby, Will Hartman, Wells Williams is still coming back. Maybe he catches fire and makes the Walker Cup team, but I think he's kind of on the outside looking in at this moment. They're intriguing. I've heard that UCLA has a guy or two transferring out, so I'm interested to kind of get to the bottom of that. And then one other team that was in the top 25 who made nationals is Georgia. And I know they lose Buck Brumlow, but they're adding Sung-Yap Choi from Colorado Christian, the really good D2 player. So he's transferring there. That could potentially be a nice little spark to that team. And I think they're pretty young otherwise. Carter Laughlin had a really good week last week. There's just a bunch of different. They kind of had a lean roster too, but they have one of my favorite names in college golf too, James Earl. He's kind of missing the Jones at the end of that, but but yeah, and they're probably they're bringing in John Daniel Culbreath. I don't know much about him, but he seemed like he was ranked fairly high. So maybe Georgia's a sneaky team, and Tennessee as well. I know I'm just throwing out every team that was in the top 25, but Tennessee is another one that I think really underachieved this year. You could ask their head coach Brennan Webb, like he'll tell you that they didn't do what they thought. So just need to get the fridge, tuned up. Maybe need to replace the water filter inside of it, clean it out a little bit in that fruit basket, and restock the beers and the Diet Cokes in there, and get fridge ready for a sophomore year.
I purposely didn't mention Tennessee because I knew that you would, and you would go there with the fridge reference. So I wanted to. For you.
Maybe there'll be a massive upgrade. Maybe we'll go from, we'll go from like a Kenmore to like a really nice, like GE or something like that. Or I guess I don't know. I don't know what the nicest fridges are because I just buy the cheapest one.
Yeah, and we've already seen that they've been quite a bit of transfer activity
in and out.
With
yeah.
Tennessee.
It was nice that they sent Bo Andrews to NC State with a couple nice parting gifts. So.
Yeah, and they got a good recruiting class, right? Chase Kais and Luke Smith, I think, from Canada, coming in. I think there's a couple blue bloods that we haven't really talked about, so maybe we want to get your perspective. Arizona State. You mentioned Florida briefly. We didn't really talk to them at length. University of Illinois. And then Florida State, how does Florida State respond with losing Clanton and obviously just missing out on match play?
Yeah, so Florida State's going to add Jack Whaley, who's from Dalton State, so that's NAIA, I believe. He's supposedly a really good player. So he's not going to replace Luke Clanton. No one is. But this team has to. They have to replace Gray Albright as well, and I don't know if Gray got as much credit as he probably should have, because I really feel like he was the kind of glue, like the emotional kind of leader. If Clanton was the star and kind of that big personality, Gray was the guy that kind of kept everything in check and everything afloat, and really worked hard, and just a super nice kid. So it's going to be a bummer not to have him around that program, but I do think they take a bit of a step back, especially because there's a lot of teams, as we just mentioned, that didn't lose a lot, and so this is going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year. ASU, they got to figure out somehow how to replace Ballester and Summerhays. They're probably still top 10. I know we didn't mention them. Florida is going to add Josh By, Trevor Gachewski. They lose Gilligan. that's probably. I mean, Gilligan's a great player, but I think at the end of the day, that's probably close to a net zero, especially when you consider
and
that.
Noah Kent too, right?
Well, and Noah Kent as well. So that, I mean, it's definitely a net zero. And then the improvements of those other guys, and hopefully Jack Turner can kind of continue to progress where he can be a little bit more. Be a little bit more consistent. Because he really, I thought, had a poor national championship, especially once we got into match play. It just didn't seem like he was fully confident in his game, and just really wasn't swinging it that well. But I look for him to kind of get back on the horse. What were some other? Oh, you mentioned Illinois. They're going to add. I forget what his first name is. The kid from.
Dane. Huddleston?
Yeah, Dane Huddleston from Utah Valley, who won like 5 or 6 times this year. They're going to add him. That'll be interesting because it's hard to win golf tournaments, like no matter where you are. And if a kid who's won 6 times and who played really well at his regional as well, if he can get under the tutelage of Mike Small, like that could be huge. Max Herendeen. Again, like he's going to be first team All-American next year. I don't think there's a doubt about that. They do lose Jackson Buchanan. They're probably just outside the top 10, kind of in the same range as, maybe North Carolina, who I don't know if this has been announced yet, but they're getting a transfer from the Big Ten here pretty soon.
It's public. Yeah. It was
really?
Public.
So they have not. They're getting Niall Shields Donegan from Northwestern. Really good player. His dad, obviously, Lawrence, is a friend of ours. A&M, tough team. They lose P-Shock, but some good young players and probably some guys, too, who they really haven't gotten much out of yet, like an Aaron Pounds, who it's probably his time to kind of step up and play a little bit bigger role. But I do think they were finished 11th. They're probably just outside the top 15 in my book. Again, I don't know what UCLA's roster is going to look like. Alabama, they added somebody. Either they added someone or lost somebody. I think they lost like Luke Coyle or something to the portal. So I don't know where they're going to be. I mean, we could keep going down.
One thing about Illinois, real quick.
Yeah,
I have to imagine you were thinking this when I thought it. The first day of stroke play, I was thinking, like, here we go again. Like Illinois was, second or third in the leaderboard, under par, right out of the gates. And last year they just blitzed the field. And I saw Ruben, the assistant, on the way in. He was like actually the first person I saw at La Costa, and I asked him like, "Hey, you gonna pull out that secret sauce again?" And they must have run out of sauce because they kind of faded the last day, which was a bit surprising, but I think maybe it exposed a little bit of the lack of depth that they had this year. But I would say that, they're traditionally a team that's run pretty lean in terms of roster. So like you said, the Mike Small education, if a player is looking to get some improvement, I would think that maybe they add another body. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, as far like you want some deep sleepers now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so one of them's gonna be. Wow, they've already started to add guys as far as like transfers because they just moved. I think this just happened. They just moved Camden Smith, the Georgia kid, over to Arkansas's page, which is pretty crazy. And then they're also getting the Nilo kid from La Tech. Eric Fortledge was a freshman last year.
Mm-hmm.
I believe John Daly II's only a junior, so he's got one more year. Does that sound right?
Seems like he's been around forever.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's another one of those guys who, I guess when you have a Hooters NIL deal, you get a couple extra years to kind of make some money on that. They're a team that I think they were outside the top 50. I think they're going to be a team that bumps up. Clemson added Oscar, a transfer from San Francisco, and then probably a team that probably is going to be a lot better is Michigan State. Ashton McCulloch, who made a run at Hazeltine at the USAM last summer. He got hurt like right at the beginning of the spring and didn't play the rest of the way, and they still made regionals. They still played pretty well. So they're a really young team. So they're trending. I think once they get Ashton back, they're going to be a team that I think makes a little bit of noise too.
Yeah, the only one I want to bring up, and then we can kind of wrap up this segment, is Stanford. Really interested to see you talked about a young team. I honestly would have expected more out of TK. I think he was playing number one for them out of the gates, but it never really quite materialized. And Jay Lang was kind of up and down as well. He came through, I think, for them in a couple key moments where it looked like they might not actually finish above 500. So I think he was a key to them actually even making regionals in the first place. But not that consistent, solid performance. These guys are like star recruits, as junior golfers, and obviously they have to weigh the academics and everything that's expected of them. But you see the success that the women's team has had, and it makes me question why, the men's team hasn't been able to build on the success they've had in recent years.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this roster just because. I mean, you mentioned the women's team. The thing that Ann does so well is she kind of recruits the person over the player, and it just so happens a lot of times that, especially on the women's side, you really get more of the top players that are also really, really good students, and that's kind of what they want. I don't know if on the men's side, necessarily the best junior golfers are necessarily the best students. Typically, they're the guys who don't want to do school, who are the best. And I don't know why that is. It's just over, the 12, 13 years of doing this, that's kind of what usually comes to the surface. Yeah, to me, this is a team that has, obviously a lot of potential. Ethan Gao was on a Junior President's Cup team, right? Like Jay Lang was as well, or maybe that was Junior Ryder Cup, something like that. So they have guys who have played well as a junior. I just don't think there's clearly something wrong with the chemistry on this team. Like it's just not a team where all these guys are kind of in it as one, in it together. And Conrad's had teams in the past that were more like that. You look at Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salinda, Mav McNeely before that. You had guys who kind of brought everyone together. I just think he's missing the guy on the team that can bring everyone together, and I don't think TK is that. TK has grown up his whole life, playing an international schedule, playing Q schools and pro events and things like that. I don't think he's the type of guy. He's not a Matt McNeely or even a Patrick Rogers or a Brandon Wu, Isaiah Salinda, who could, or even like a Henry Shimp, who just is a guy who can just bring a team together. And so I think that's really what they're missing.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we wrap up? We'll bring Joseph back online here for a second. You mentioned some Walker Cuppers in the past. The last time we had you here in November, we made some bold Walker Cup predictions, and I'll give you maybe a chance of one or two mulligans on your picks, and maybe how you see this thing shaking out, especially as we head into the summer. I think I really like the Elite Am series in the Walker Cup years because I think that there's a lot more at stake. Like you're gonna be playing in front of Captain Nate Smith, and some of these choices. There may be some locks, or probably like Koiven and others are locks, but it may end up coming down to 7-8 guys for 3 spots, right? And it might be how you play in the Northeast Am or the Western Am, or obviously the US Am as well. But you had Clanton, so that's probably not gonna.
Happen. He didn't have his. I don't think. Well, when did we do these again? Like last.
We did it in November, right after they had the practice squad.
Okay, so yeah, at that point, Clanton was still a little bit away from getting his points and things of that. So yeah, I'm willing to be okay with that. we are going to have, I think Brendan Valdez and both Jackson Van Paris and he are turning pro, so they're kind of off the board. I know that was, I think Joseph was in on Clanton in those two, so he's got a lot of pros now. So he's going to be transitioning this to a Walker Cup or a Ryder Cup prediction. So I had
so you had Koiven, Ben James, which I think both of those guys are locks. Tommy Morrison, pretty close to a lock.
Old Tom
I would
Morrison.
say you had
Big Tom
Lasasso.
Morrison.
I did not have Lasasso, so that was you and Joseph had him. So I think that's pretty.
He's probably
close to a lock.
on now, right?
Yeah.
Winning NCAAs. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, you had Max Herendeen, Ethan Fang, Wells Williams, and Jacob Bolesky,
And Evan Beck.
and Evan Beck, who I think is a lock.
Don't tell Stu Hagestad that.
Is he hurt? Is Stu hurt?
No, he's playing. He's going to be up with me on Monday at the Summit, New Jersey U.S. Open qualifier. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, he's got a little elbow deal, but Stu's he's a tough guy, and I think he is super motivated to go out this summer and really play well and kind of prove, like, because again, Evan Beck won last year's Mid-Am. I don't think that automatically makes you the Mid-Am representative.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
probably a lock, but again, all that was last year. If Stu goes out this summer and makes a run at the Am again, it's going to be hard to kind of keep him off. But it's kind of either or with that. So you're asking who do I want to take off and then put back and put on?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I'll leave. Obviously, Clanton's off, so that's one new one. I'll leave Herendeen on. I'll take Wells Williams and Modleski off. I'll leave Ethan Fang on. Just a super consistent year. Didn't win a whole lot, but he showed me a lot in match play, and he was going to close out his match. And he didn't get a chance to on Wednesday in the final, so I'll leave him on. So I'm adding
by the way,
3.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That the final score of the last match, it wouldn't have been 4-1, right? Like Clip basically assumed that he had won that match.
No, because that's how it always has been
Okay.
before, these last couple of years, and the NCAA having 3-1. Normally they just don't even count it, so it's like they win 3-1 or whatever.
3-1
But
or whatever.
I've always been under the assumption that you basically just act as if you're just conceding, everyone's just saying good the rest of the way. So you basically just take that result and simulate the match out. So if you're ahead, then you get the point. I mean, I know it's not a guarantee that you would have won that match, but you also, there's no guarantee that you would have lost it either. So I just think, I mean, if you're 6 up on a guy, I know that's probably mathematically impossible, but if you're like 3 up on a guy with 4 to play and it's over, you'd be kind of mad if you got it credited with a tie.
With a tie, yeah.
And you really can't, like, yeah, I mean, you can't, like there's not really a line where you can say one way or the other, like, oh, if you're 2 up with this, then it counts. I think you just have to just say, all right, well, just the rest of the holes are tied, and this is the result. But yeah, I mean, that's my stance on it. I know not everyone feels that way, but that's what that's what I think. So
sorry, who would you be adding?
All right, so I got to add 3. I'll go Preston Stout. Put 2 Oklahoma State kids on there. I know he didn't play well against Ben James, but you talk about like character guys. Like he is a really high character guy. Has a lot of game. Super tough kid. Won Big 12. Was basically not sleeping and throwing up and not being able to keep food down. So that, and him being a national champion, and I think he's going to have a big summer as long as he doesn't go hunting half the time, which he's done before. In junior golf, he missed back-to-back junior players, I think it was, because he went dove hunting or something, because he does a big dove hunting trip every August. So maybe that overlaps with the Walker Cup and he doesn't play. But I would put him on it. So I got 2 more. I'll I'm still not sold on Jay Summy. I know he's ranked 17th in the world, and he'll be higher than that when these guys turn pro. I'm not quite sold on him yet, and I do think you have a point where there's going to be a lot to play for this summer, and there are 3 or 4 spots that are very much up for grabs depending on who plays well. But so I'm adding Stout. I'm not going to add Josiah Gilbert just because it seemed like he wasn't, and he didn't have an American flag next to his name until like yesterday. So I'm not going to add him. I'll go with
why would he switch unless it was for Walker Cup purposes?
Well, he probably did, but I don't think that, I don't know. I mean, he's not. Maybe he's going to be a spy. For future President's Cup thing. Maybe he's going to flip back when he turns pro and play for Ogilvy and Immelman and those guys. Who knows? But no, in all seriousness, Miles Russell, I think he's going to be on. We heard an interesting tidbit that he could be making his decision right on June 15th, and it's between 2 schools in the Southeast, and so that's interesting. And then I'll go Brian Lee. Again, high character guy, great putter, probably underrated. I think he's always been overlooked, but I think he's going to have a big summer. I'm going to call it right now. Brian Lee wins the Northeast Amateur. That'll be my summer prediction.
Wow.
If he plays. I don't even know if he's playing. A lot of those guys are going to play like British Am and stuff, but because I know both like Ethan Fang and Eric Lee are going over to play British Am.
Wow. Okay. Joseph, yes. You picked Clanton.
Yeah, I've
Van
got
Paris and Valdez.
3 pros I need to swap
do-overs?
out. Yeah, I'm gonna swap Clanton for Fang, and then I'm in between. I think Brentley convinced me. I'm not buying the Summy stock anymore, and I think I'm gonna use my Miles Russell pick on that.
This Driven is not gonna have Jay Summy on anytime soon.
Miles winning 5 out of 7 tournaments to start the year, and kind of the wraparound at the end of last year was pretty impressive. So I think he's made a great impression. And then I don't know. Can I put Tankersley on there? Do I still have room?
Yeah, he's on the list, short list.
All right, we'll swap him out for JVP. How about that?
Okay. All right, so I did not have Clanton. I had Summy. I had Ethan Evans, who didn't have a great spring. I was really high on him last fall, as you may recall. I also had Wells Williams, Ethan Fang. I had Blades Brown, so I guess I need to have a do-over there. So I would, I guess, replace both Blades and Ethan. I have the benefit of knowing future Wagger rankings. Basically where guys are trending and their trajectory, and obviously things like making match play in the NCAAs is a nice little Wagger boost for those guys on those 8 teams, and then Palmer Cup also a nice little boost as well. So I think Preston Stout is, if not a lock, is getting into lock territory. I'm going to keep Summy on for sure. I think Josiah Gilbert, I'm going to put him on just because I think the fact that he would switch, I think that means that he's really motivated by making the squad. So I would see him, performing well this summer. And I have him like 11th in Wagger as of U.S. Amateur Week. And he would be like the 9th American on the list. We haven't talked about Jack Turner. I think he would be 9th as of now on Wagger in terms of where he's trending. Molesky 15th, Wells Williams 13th, so he's still in the conversation. We haven't really talked about Connor Williams 16th, Brian Lee 18th, Max Herendeen 19th, Tankersley 20th, Miles Russell 22. I think that's about as far down as you can get. But like one big win in a big AM event, you can jump, probably 10 spots in this level, 10, 12 spots in this level, and get yourself in that conversation. So guys like Lance Simpson, Ryder Cohen, Luke Potter even. You know, those are guys that could potentially have a big summer, and plus, like, you could knock the door down and just win the U.S. Amateur, right, as well. So, yeah. So I think we'll see in just a few months. It'll be a fascinating summer. So, Brentley, really appreciate having you on, and just like I said, I think it was a good excuse to get on and talk college golf, and hopefully it piques the interest for folks, paying close attention to these amateur events this summer, and all the ramifications and what it means, not only for Walker Cup, but just kind of the momentum it leads into next fall. And let's do what we can to keep building this college golf, because I do think it is a fascinating watch, and appreciate everything you and Burko and others do for the sport.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, and it was cool to have you at La Costa for, 6 or 7 days, something like that, almost a week.
6 days, yeah. Yep.
So that was really fun, getting to spend more time with you, and I think you enjoyed it. It was I think I talked it up a little too much, so I was worried that I was going to overhype it. But as you said, it's a cool thing to be able to walk in the fairways and get to talk to like these players and coaches, and even as a fan, you can come and interact with guys to where you can't do that at a U.S. Open or a tour event, or really anything above like kind of the KFT level. So glad.
The one fascinating thing is like the tension level, like it ramps up each day that you're there, right? Like the practice round day, like it's super casual. You can have great conversations, and even in this early stroke play rounds, like if coach saw you even during the match, like you could have a little conversation with him or whatever. But like, you get into the last day of stroke play, or when they make that cut, or obviously in the match play, like they're locked in, right? Yeah,
it gets super focused. But yeah, we'll do it again next year. We'll enjoy some $30 burgers, and hopefully, you'll pick Michael Asasso over Cameron Tankersley next time.
All right, appreciate the time, Brentley. We'll see you.
Yeah.
See you, Brentley.
All right, it was good.